I was glowing when I walked into the office that morning, literally and emotionally. The nausea had finally subsided, and my 12-week ultrasound had shown a strong, steady heartbeat. I was officially out of the danger zone, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. This was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. I was going to be a mother. And as a senior account manager at Preston and Gray, a top-tier marketing firm in Chicago, I genuinely believed I could have it all, career and motherhood. I was so wrong. I remember every detail about the day I told my boss, Diane. She was this impeccably dressed, sharp-edged woman in her late 50s who ran our department like a military operation. I'd always admired her. She had clawed her way to the top in a male-dominated field and never let anyone forget it. "Diane," I said, knocking gently on her office door. "Do you have a minute?" She glanced up from her monitor, gave me a tight smile, and waved me in. "What's up, Tessa? Everything okay with the Burton proposal?" "It's great," I said, easing into the chair across from her. "Actually, this is personal. I wanted to share some news." She arched one perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Oh?" "I'm pregnant," I said, trying to contain the smile spreading across my face. 12 weeks. Everything looks good. And I plan to work all the way up to my due date. I'm already planning how to transition my accounts during maternity leave. For a split second, her face went blank, like someone had turned the lights off behind her eyes. Then she smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Well," she said, folding her hands. "Congratulations. That's lovely." The pause before lovely sent a chill down my spine. I tried to brush it off, but something in her tone made my stomach twist, not from the pregnancy, but from something deeper. Instinct. The next few days were normal. Too normal. My teammates didn't know yet, but Diane had clearly told HR, because suddenly I was being left out of high-priority meetings. Clients I'd built from scratch were being reassigned for coverage. My name disappeared from planning boards. My inbox, usually flooded, started drying up. By week 2, I was panicking. I asked Diane if we could talk. She smiled again, same smile, same dead eyes. "Tessa," she said, folding her hands like she was about to deliver a eulogy. "I've been reviewing your performance metrics. And frankly, I'm concerned." "Concerned?" I repeated. "About what?" "Engagement. Billable hours. Leadership potential. The usual." I stared at her. "I just landed the Greystone account 3 weeks ago. That's the largest deal this firm has closed all quarter." "It was a team effort," she said smoothly. "And besides, it's not about one deal. We're restructuring. Making room for new blood." That's when I knew. She wasn't just concerned. She was getting rid of me. 2 days later, HR called me in. "Due to departmental changes," they said, "your position has been eliminated. You'll receive 2 weeks severance and extended healthcare through the end of the month." I asked if this had anything to do with my pregnancy. They looked at each other and smiled with that corporate, legally vetted coldness that makes you want to scream. "Of course not," the HR manager said. "This was purely a performance decision." They handed me a folder. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a script. A script. They wanted me to sign a statement saying I had voluntarily stepped down to focus on my family. I pushed the folder back across the table and stood up. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," I said. I had no lawyer, but I wasn't going to let them take my dignity. I walked out of that office with my head held high, even though my legs felt like jelly and my heart was splintering into 1,000 pieces. I cried in my car. I screamed into the steering wheel until my throat was raw. I felt like a failure. I had spent 7 years building my career, sacrificing weekends, vacations, and nights out with friends, all for what? To be discarded like garbage the second I became inconvenient. I didn't know what to do. My savings were modest, and my husband, Josh, worked a teaching job that barely covered our mortgage. We were thrilled about the baby, but we had counted on my income. For a week, I did nothing but cry. I stayed in bed, ate cold cereal, and felt the weight of the world pressing down on my chest. My self-worth, my identity, everything felt like it had been ripped away. Until one morning, I scrolled past a comment on a parenting forum. I wish someone would create a job board just for moms. It's like the second you get pregnant, you become unemployable. That lit a spark in me. I didn't have a job anymore, but I still had skills. Marketing, communication, branding, strategy. And now, I had fire. The spark didn't come with a lightning bolt of inspiration. It came with desperation, and a slow burn of righteous anger. I kept rereading that forum comment. I wish someone would create a job board just for moms. That night, lying on the couch with a pillow tucked under my belly and my laptop propped on my knees, I opened a Google Doc and typed 3 words at the top: Mom First Project. It sounded clunky at first, like a charity or some awkward nonprofit. But it was a placeholder for something real. I didn't know exactly what it would become, but I knew who it was for. Women like me. Smart, capable, and completely sidelined the moment they chose motherhood. I wanted to build something that didn't just allow moms to work, but welcomed them, supported them, and celebrated them. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., researching platforms, remote work trends, and hiring biases against pregnant women and working mothers. I read studies, articles, lawsuits, Reddit threads. I was shocked by how widespread the discrimination was, and how quiet the victims had been forced to stay. By sunrise, I had filled 5 pages of notes and outlined a concept: a remote job network specifically for moms. Companies had to prove they were mom-friendly to post. The platform would match women with skills to flexible, fair employers. Bonus: resume help, interview coaching, and even legal education about maternity rights. It wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. But I was going to build a world where companies like Preston and Gray had to come to me for talent. And when they did, I'd decide whether they were worthy. Josh was skeptical at first. "I love the idea," he said carefully one morning over coffee. "But Tessa, we're about to have a baby. Shouldn't you rest? Maybe apply for jobs instead?" "I'm done begging for scraps," I said. "I'm building something of my own." He didn't argue. Josh has always known when I have that edge in my voice, the one that means I've already made up my mind. To keep us afloat financially, I picked up small freelance gigs, copywriting, branding, even ghostwriting LinkedIn bios. Anything that paid. Every spare minute I poured into building the site. It was ugly at first. Just a few landing pages and a basic job board. I bought a $29 logo off Fiverr and created social media accounts. I shared my story anonymously at first, a fired marketing exec starting over while pregnant. The post got 12 likes. Then 48. Then hundreds. I created a private Facebook group for moms looking for flexible work. Within a month, we had 2,000 members. By the time I hit my 3rd trimester, the Mom First project had a heartbeat of its own. But the real turning point came because of a mistake. A small startup in Denver had posted a job on our board. Their founder, a woman named Leah, emailed me personally, "I love what you're doing. I was laid off during my pregnancy too. We only hire remote. We want to support women." I helped her craft a job description that didn't just accommodate moms, it spoke to them. Flexible hours, understanding of family emergencies, no penalty for school pickups or sick days. Within 24 hours, she had over 300 qualified applicants, every single one a mom with years of experience who had been pushed out of corporate life. Leah was thrilled. And then she did something that changed everything. She posted about it on LinkedIn. She named me. She named the Mom First project. It went viral. By the next morning, my inbox had exploded. Recruiters. Companies. Journalists. Women from across the country sharing their stories. Some just wanted to vent. Others asked how they could help. A few offered investments. And then I saw it. An email. From Preston and Gray. Subject line: potential collaboration opportunity. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Hi Tessa, I recently came across your platform, and I must say, congratulations. This is an incredible initiative. Preston and Gray is actively looking to increase its diversity and flexibility in hiring practices, and we'd love to explore how we might partner with you. Let me know if you're open to a chat. Best, Kelsey Marks, Director of Strategic Partnerships, Preston and Gray. I laughed out loud. Loud enough to startle Josh in the other room. It was poetic. Perfect. The same company that had called me a restructuring casualty wanted to collaborate now that I was trending. My first instinct was to write back immediately, sorry, we only work with companies that don't fire women for getting pregnant. But I waited. Not out of kindness. Out of strategy. I didn't want a satisfying email. I wanted them to beg. The weeks leading up to my due date were a blur of growth. The Momverse project officially launched its first paid plan. Companies could post jobs for a fee, and we'd vet them for mom friendliness. Within 2 weeks, we had 17 paying clients. By the time I went into labor, I had a team of 5 freelancers and a waiting list of companies trying to join the network. Our daughter, Lily, was born on a chilly October morning, healthy and screaming, a perfect, tiny miracle. I took 2 weeks off. Not because I had to, but because I had built a life where I could. When I opened my laptop again, the email from Preston and Gray was still sitting in my inbox, now marked follow-up number 3. They had sent 3 emails. The third one was the best. Hi again, Tessa, just checking in. We'd be happy to pay a premium to post on your platform. Our leadership team is eager to engage with your talent pool and is open to additional sponsorship opportunities. Looking forward to your response. Eager, huh? I drafted a response with shaking fingers. Not from nerves, from exhilaration. Subject, potential collaboration opportunity. Hi Kelsey, thank you for your kind words. It means a lot coming from Preston and Gray. While we appreciate your interest, Momverse only partners with companies that have demonstrated a commitment to supporting working mothers, not just in words, but in practice. Unfortunately, given my personal experience with your firm, we do not feel confident in your alignment with our values. Best of luck with your diversity efforts. Warm regards, Tessa Nolan, founder and CEO of the Momverse Project. I hit send. And then I leaned back, holding Lily against my chest, and cried, not from sadness, but from the kind of deep, quiet triumph that doesn't need applause. I wasn't just back. I was unstoppable. There's a unique kind of high that comes when your pain turns into power, when the same world that once tried to silence you suddenly starts listening. 2 months after I sent that final email to Preston and Gray, my story was featured in a Forbes Women article titled "Fired for Being Pregnant. She built a platform that's changing how companies hire moms." The journalist had found me through LinkedIn, and by the time we got on our Zoom call, she already knew half my story from the viral post Leah had written weeks before. "You're the revenge story people want to root for," she said, scribbling notes as I rocked Lily in her bassinet off camera. I smiled, but I kept quiet about how deliberate that revenge had been. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning. By noon, our traffic had tripled. By Wednesday, we'd been invited to speak at 3 women in tech panels, and by the weekend, I was fielding offers from angel investors, some legitimate, some laughable. One VC even asked if I'd be open to stepping aside as CEO if they invested. I declined with a smile and a firm, I didn't build this to hand it over. But among the offers, one name stood out. Dana Burke. She wasn't a VC. She was the founder of Slatebridge Group, a recruiting firm with massive corporate clients, Amazon, Stripe, even government agencies. She requested a call to discuss potential alignment between our missions. I knew the name. Slatebridge had been Preston and Gray's go-to recruiter back when I worked there. I'd helped onboard several candidates they sourced. The irony made my skin prickle. Still, I agreed to the call. Dana's voice was sharp, confident. The kind of tone that always meant business and power. But to her credit, she didn't waste time with flattery. "I'll be honest with you, Tessa," she said. "I've been watching you since that LinkedIn post blew up. What you're building. It's brilliant. And needed." "Thank you," I said, cautious. "We've been trying to push our clients toward more inclusive hiring for years, but they always come up short when it comes to flexible roles. Your platform bridges the gap." I waited. There was always a pitch. "I want to acquire Momfors." There it was. Dana kept going, as if my silence was a green light. "Not to dismantle it, Tessa. To scale it. I'm offering a full acquisition, with you as managing director of the new division. You'll get a generous equity package, total creative control, and full operational funding." My heart pounded. The numbers she floated were real, life-changing. And God, it would make things easier. I was still answering emails at 3 a.m. between feedings. I was bootstrapping every hire. I was tired. But I wasn't naive. Would I have the authority to reject clients? I asked. Say, if a company with a history of maternal discrimination wanted in? Dana paused. Just long enough. Every client would go through your standards. But we'd also coach them. Help them change from the inside. I didn't like the vagueness. But I told her I'd think about it. That night, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. Josh was asleep beside me, one arm flung across the covers. I could hear Lily breathing through the baby monitor. I thought about the early days, the fear, the resentment, the fire. How many women had messaged me in the last few months, thanking me for giving them a chance? How many emails I'd gotten that started with "I thought my career was over," and I thought about how much of Momfors still depended on me. I was still the voice. The story. The heart. Could I risk handing it to a company that worked with the very systems that broke us? A few days later, I met Dana in person. She flew in from New York and invited me to lunch at a trendy co-working space downtown. She was tall, sleek, perfectly put together in a cream suit that probably cost more than my rent. I wore jeans, a blazer, and a Momfors t-shirt. Let her see what real work looked like. She was cordial, warm even. But every word was calculated. "I see you, Tessa. I know what it's like to build something from scratch. But you need scale. Infrastructure. Capital." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a term sheet. Mid-seven-figure valuation. A high salary. A director title. Her confidence was palpable. I closed the folder without looking at the details. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "But I built Momfors so that we never have to compromise. Once you're answering to shareholders or legacy clients, the mission slips." Dana studied me. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "I had to try," she said. "You're going to be competition soon, aren't you?" "I already am." The Momfors project kept growing. We hired full-time staff. Partnered with several universities to upskill moms returning to work. A former HR director from Google joined as an advisor. We even launched our own podcast. But success doesn't erase scars. One night, while scrolling through LinkedIn, I saw a post from Preston and Gray. They were promoting their new Family First hiring initiative, complete with stock photos of smiling mothers and flexible work slogans. I clicked the link. There, in bold letters, was the name Mira Ellison, the very manager who had pushed me out. Apparently, she was now head of people and culture. My stomach twisted. It was easy to preach progress once you've already burned the evidence of your past failures. That's when I decided to go public, with names. It wasn't a takedown. It was a timeline. I wrote a detailed LinkedIn post outlining my firing, the language used, the HR silence, and how the experience birthed Momfors. I didn't slander. I didn't exaggerate. I just told the truth. At the end, I linked Preston and Gray's recent campaign and asked one question: how can companies claim to empower women now when they refuse to protect them then? The post went viral. Women commented with their own stories. Some from the same firm. Some worse. Others simply said thank you for saying what they were still afraid to. Preston and Gray never responded. But Mira took down her post within 24 hours. That weekend, Momfirst saw its biggest spike in applications to date. I wasn't just building a company anymore. I was building a movement. And for the first time since I walked out of that glass-walled office with tears in my eyes and a silent baby kicking in my belly, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. They say success is the best revenge, but they never talk about the price of being visible. After my LinkedIn post calling out Preston and Gray went viral, I wasn't prepared for what came next. The praise, sure, that flooded in like a tidal wave. But the backlash? That came quieter, colder, and more calculated. It started with anonymous emails. The first one said, "You should be careful with what you say online. Defamation has consequences." Another came from a burner Gmail account, "Stop lying for clout. You were let go for performance, not pregnancy." But the worst was a private message forwarded to me by Leah, my old coworker. It had been posted in a private Slack group for Preston and Gray alumni. The message read, "Tessa Nolan is trying to play the victim card to build a business. Don't believe everything you read, she was difficult, entitled, and her work was inconsistent. Momfirst is a pity party pretending to be a company." They didn't sign it. But I knew the voice. Mira Ellison had always used coded professionalism as a weapon. I sat there, staring at my laptop, heart hammering. Lily was asleep in her carrier beside me, her little chest rising and falling in soft rhythm. I wanted to cry. To scream. To go on another public rant. But I didn't. Instead, I wrote a different kind of post. I titled it "What They Say About Women Who Speak Up." I didn't name names this time. I didn't even talk about myself much. I talked about the thousands of messages I'd received from women who had been labeled difficult after returning from maternity leave, or unfocused once they became moms. I talked about how convenient it was for companies to twist the narrative, to turn their failures into our flaws. And I ended it with this: if defending your rights makes you difficult, I hope every woman becomes impossible. That post exploded. Again. Over 3 million impressions. HR leaders, journalists, even a senator reposted it. And that's when I realized something: I didn't need to defend myself anymore. I had already won the moral war. Now it was time to build something too big to ignore. We launched Momfirst 2.0 in March. It wasn't just a job board anymore. We added legal resources for workplace discrimination cases. We partnered with a law firm to offer free consultations for mothers who'd been fired unfairly. We created a scholarship fund for single moms who wanted to res-kill. We even launched a national campaign called #ImpossibleMothers, highlighting stories of moms who had been dismissed, doubted, and discarded, only to come back stronger. One of the first women we featured was Julia, a software engineer fired during her high-risk pregnancy who now led a dev team at a startup she co-founded. Another was Imani, a former hotel manager who'd been denied time off to care for her newborn. She was now running her own hospitality staffing firm. And people listened. News outlets started calling. Universities asked me to speak. The Department of Labor invited me to a roundtable on workplace equity. Meanwhile, Preston and Gray kept silent, but I heard whispers. Clients were pulling back. One major partner had even signed with Slate Bridge, citing misalignment of values. Poetic justice never tasted so sweet. But success still scared me. One afternoon, I got a certified letter at my front door. It was from a law firm, Preston and Gray's legal counsel. Inside, a cease and desist. They accused me of defamation. Of inciting reputational harm. Of breaching an NDA I'd never actually signed. I laughed. Then I read it again, and I didn't. Because beneath the legal language, it was clear, this was a threat. An attempt to silence me, scare me, slow me down. I called our attorney. "You're clean," she said. "They've got nothing." Still, it shook me. That night, Josh found me sitting on the floor in the nursery, staring at the mobile above Lily's crib. What if I pushed too hard? I asked him. What if they take it all away? He knelt beside me, took my hand. You didn't push too hard. They just never expected you to push back. And just like that, I remembered who I was. The next morning, I posted a video. It was just me, no filters, no editing. I read sections of the cease and desist aloud and explained, calmly, that this was what happened when women refused to stay quiet. I ended with this: Momverse exists because companies like Preston and Gray continue to punish motherhood. If they want to sue me for telling the truth, they can add that to their legacy. I didn't need it to go viral. But it did. And this time, it wasn't just women sharing it. Male allies. Executives. Board members. People who once stayed silent were now speaking up, tagging companies, calling for accountability. Someone even launched a change.org petition demanding Preston and Gray release a public apology. They never did. But 2 months later, Mira quietly stepped down. It's funny how your greatest humiliation can become your greatest leverage. I didn't just get revenge. I built a platform, gave jobs to over 6,000 moms in the first year, and forced one of the biggest firms in the city to confront its ugly truth. All because they thought firing me would make me disappear. Instead, I became impossible. By the time Momverse hit its 1-year anniversary, it was bigger than I ever imagined. We had over 6,000 moms placed in flexible, well-paying roles across the country. A mobile app. 3 core teams in operations, legal, and placement. And an inbox that barely kept up with demand. But with growth came something I hadn't anticipated: corporate interest. One Monday morning, I got a message from a recruiter representing a large-scale workplace innovation group. Translation: venture capital. They weren't just interested in investing. They wanted to acquire Momverse. Entirely. We see this as a scalable, global platform, the woman said during our first video call. You've built something really special, but with our infrastructure and capital, you could be the next Indeed, the next Glassdoor. She smiled like it was a compliment. But it didn't feel like one. They offered $8 million for a controlling stake. It was tempting. I won't lie. That kind of money would change our lives. I thought about paying off our mortgage, about starting college savings for Lily. I thought about buying my mom a house. She'd been there for me when I had nothing. But something about the deal sat wrong with me. Would we still control the hiring criteria? I asked. Well, we'd keep the mission, she said vaguely. But we'd need to streamline the vetting process. Scale it. Maybe loosen the requirement for flexible hours. No. No, no, no. That was the whole point. We weren't just getting moms jobs. We were fighting for the kind of workplaces that respected their time, their caregiving, their worth. If we removed that, what was left? Just another hiring platform. I needed to think. So I flew to New York for a week. Not for business. For soul searching. I spent time with 3 women I'd met through Momverse, each one living proof of what our mission could do. Carla, a former nurse turned remote patient coordinator, who got back to work after her 3rd miscarriage. Nisha, a data analyst and single mom of 2, who used our legal resources to win a wrongful termination case. And Riley, a military spouse who'd moved 4 times in 6 years, now working as a fully remote UX designer. I listened to their stories. Their hopes. Their fears. And by the time I boarded the plane home, I knew. I couldn't sell this. Not for $8 million. Not for any amount. Back in Chicago, I called a team meeting. I laid everything out, honestly. the offer, the money, the potential. And then I asked, do we want to be massive, or do we want to be meaningful? A long silence followed. Then our placement director, Keisha, said, why not both? But on our terms. That's when we pivoted. We decided to expand, but not sell. Instead of going the traditional funding route, we launched a crowdfunding campaign called #FundMomsFirst. We didn't pitch it to investors. We pitched it to the people who believed in us, mothers, allies, everyday workers who knew the system needed fixing. Our goal was $250,000. We hit it in 36 hours. And then something wild happened. Brands started reaching out, not to buy us, but to partner. Athleisure companies wanted to sponsor our return-to-work wardrobe kits. Big tech companies asked us to help redesign their maternity leave onboarding. Even a national chain of co-working spaces offered to open MomFirst hubs in 5 cities, drop-in offices with free childcare. Suddenly, we weren't just surviving. We were shaping the conversation. Then came the moment that hit me hardest. We got an email from a woman named Dana. She'd been a mid-level marketing manager at, of all places, Preston and Gray. She'd followed my story, seen what happened. And last month, after giving birth to her second child, she got hit with a restructure layoff. Sound familiar? But this time, she didn't just take it. She contacted our legal team, filed a claim, and landed a job at one of our partner firms 2 weeks later. Her subject line said, "Your fight made my life easier." I cried for 10 minutes straight. We're 2 years in now. MomFirst has chapters in 6 cities. We've placed over 18,000 mothers in new careers. We've funded scholarships, fought lawsuits, and launched an online community with over 300,000 members. And Lily? She's 3, curious, and recently told me she wants to be a boss like mommy. That might be the greatest win of all. People still ask me, don't you regret what happened with Preston and Gray? I don't. Because if they hadn't fired me for getting pregnant, I never would have built the company that's redefining what power looks like, for moms, and for women everywhere. They tried to shut a door on me. So I tore down the wall. 2.5 years after Preston and Gray fired me, I found myself standing in front of a mirror in a DC hotel room, buttoning the same blazer I wore the day they escorted me out of the building. I hadn't worn it since. Not because it didn't fit, but because it reminded me of failure. Today, it represented something else entirely. Across town, the House Committee on Women and Work Equity was holding a hearing. The agenda: discrimination in the workplace against pregnant employees and mothers. And I had been invited as the lead civilian witness. When I walked into the Capitol that morning, I expected to feel nervous. Maybe intimidated. Instead, I felt calm. Certain. Grounded. Like I belonged there. I took my seat at the panel beside academics, advocates, and a woman who had lost her pregnancy after being denied bathroom breaks during a warehouse shift. Each story was heartbreaking. Each one needed to be heard. And then they called me up. I began with my story. How I had spent years climbing the ladder at Preston and Gray. How I had won awards, closed major clients, and led entire teams. And how, the moment I told them I was pregnant, I became a liability. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I spoke like a woman who'd bled, healed, and built something better. Then I shared MomFirst's impact. The thousands of mothers we had helped. The companies we had retrained. The policies we were pushing into mainstream hiring practices. We don't want handouts, I told them. We want fair ground. And we're building it ourselves. The room was silent when I finished. Then came the applause. But the part one didn't expect? The next panel. Because that's when Mira Ellison, my former boss at Preston and Gray, walked in. I almost laughed. Of course she'd be here. She was testifying on behalf of the National Employers Alliance, arguing that small to mid-sized firms couldn't reasonably accommodate extended maternity benefits without sacrificing competitiveness. She didn't mention me directly. But when a representative from Illinois asked how many women Preston and Gray had terminated in the last 5 years due to department restructuring, Mira froze. She stumbled through an answer. I watched her squirm behind her practiced smile. I didn't speak. I didn't glare. I just sat there and watched her undo herself. After the hearing, a few of the other panelists came up to thank me. One congresswoman hugged me. But the most surprising moment came as I was walking out. Mira caught up to me in the marble hallway. "Tessa," she said, voice soft. "You look well." I nodded. She hesitated. "What you've done with that company, Momfors, is it? It's impressive." Truly. It sounded like a compliment, but it was wrapped in the kind of tight-lipped tension that comes from realizing the person you once underestimated now outranks you. I met her eyes and replied, "You fired me to protect your image. Now I'm using mine to fix what you helped break." She didn't respond. She just turned and walked away. And that was it. No final confrontation. No dramatic slap. Just a woman who bet on the wrong thing, profit over people, and lost. Today, Momfors is working with the Department of Labor to create model guidelines for pregnancy-friendly workplaces. We've partnered with 40 companies to audit and reform their parental policies. And just last month, we launched the Momfors Fellowship, a paid program to train and place moms returning to the workforce after caregiving gaps. We started with 3 cities. We're expanding to 10 by next year. Sometimes I still get emails from people at Preston and Gray. Quiet messages. Whispered thank yous. One woman wrote, "You gave me the courage to leave, and I just got hired through Momfors." It never gets old. Lily is 4 now. She still calls me mommy, but she also calls me the boss lady. She tells her preschool friends that I help mommies get jobs. And maybe that's all I ever needed. Not revenge. Not millions. Just a chance to build something that matters. Something that proves women don't have to choose between motherhood and success. We can have both. We just needed a company, and a world, that believed it too.